Hey guys, Miss Knierim here. This week we are going to be writing the second body paragraph of our essay. And remember that one of the most important things that we've been learning about essay writing this year so far is to make sure that our essay has logical progression. And I think I touched on that in the video last week, but just as a reminder, we want to make sure that somebody can't take a pair of scissors and cut our two body paragraphs in half and put them in either order and still have our essay make sense. So in order for an essay to have logical progression, which is one of the things you're graded on, we need to make sure that it flows from one idea to the next. So the first thing I'm going to do is go back to my outline, because remember, everything that we're doing comes back to the outline, and I've scaled my outline down to my two main ideas with my evidence. So the main idea that I wrote about last week was this one. So this week I'm going to be writing about this main idea and using these two pieces of evidence that I have on here. I also check back to make sure that's the order that I wrote about them in my introduction, and it is. So there are my reasons there, and you can see this reason comes second. So that's matching. And then last week, this was the paragraph about how pennies are too expensive to make and therefore they shouldn't be produced anymore. So I want to draw your attention to this last sentence. So the last sentence, remember, is written in red. That's our wrap-up sentence color. And it says, unfortunately, the penny is costing way more to make than they are worth. That wraps up the idea of this paragraph. And most Americans don't take them seriously anyway. So that is what is leading into my next main idea. So you can see that I have laid the groundwork here for going into the next body paragraph and going on with that next main idea statement. So, all right, so I'm gonna start out with my topic and point statement, or my main idea statement. Remember, each paragraph needs to have one. So I'm going to, because I did a wrap up here using the word unfortunately, I'm a little hesitant to use a transition that we would normally see, like in addition, additionally, also, furthermore. Now you certainly could, but it's going to depend on how you wrapped up your last body paragraph, whether that's going to flow as well, or just starting right out with it. So I'm going to go ahead and choose to go ahead and just get on with it and not use a transition there. But remember, depending on how you wrapped up your last paragraph, generally speaking, you would have a transition on your second body paragraph. All right, so pennies. So I'm going to also not copy what I wrote at the end, but definitely kind of state it in a different way just to kind of bring that idea forward again. So pennies are not only, and you can kind of see there's a transition. So even though it doesn't come here at the beginning of the paragraph, I'm still using that not only, and that is a transition that we can use from one idea to the next. So some people might say not only are pennies, but I just like the way it sounds better. Pennies are not only adding to our national debt, they are also, and I'm going to change to red because this is going to get into my point. They are also a waste because most Americans don't appreciate their value. Okay, so that's what I'm going to be proving in this body paragraph, is that pennies are a waste because most Americans don't appreciate their value. So notice that I didn't copy it in exactly the same way. People don't take them seriously because we want to make sure that we aren't repeating ourselves over and over again. So using those synonyms, trying to come up with different ways of saying things, that's going to make your writing sound better and less repetitive. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start out with a piece of elaboration, because my first piece of evidence is talking about taking up space on our dressers at home. And when I started thinking about that evidence, I started thinking about all of the different places that you see pennies in ways that they are not useful. So I'm going to start out with a little piece of elaboration about that. So I'm going to say they are lost under couch cushions. I could have said like the floorboard of the car, like wherever you would think, but couch cushions worked for me. And thrown into wishing well fountains. So that's also something that the reader is going to be able to relate to. So not often do we see dollar bills or $5 bills, quarters. Most of the time they're pennies, and people are willing to throw them into a fountain because they don't appreciate their value. So that's going to help add credibility to the point that I'm making. And this is the part that's evidence. Taking up space on our dressers at home, and period, end quote. And I'm gonna, that came from source 1. So a couple of things I did here is I incorporated my evidence as part of the sentence that I was working on. And I also was able to slip in using a series. So remember that we want to try to vary up our sentences. And so this is showing a variety of different sentence structures by using a series of 3. So that just kind of shows the reader that I can use a variety of different sentence structures in my writing. So that's good. We want to do that when we can. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and go into another elaboration about that. So I'm going to say rather than collecting them, so this is the opposite of, this is a compare and contrast elaboration strategy. Rather than collecting them in a penny jar and cashing them in most people let them sit around wasting space and cluttering our lives. And then I'm going to go into another piece of elaboration, because remember, we want to make sure we are using our own words in the writing, and we're only using evidence to back up our own thoughts. So I'm going to go ahead and keep going on this idea, and I'm going to put the reader into a scenario. So I'm going to say, how many times when a cashier offers you change and it's only a few pennies, do you reply, no, keep the change? And I'm going to go ahead and give them the answer because you don't really want them to think about it. So I'm going to tell them the answer to that is probably quite often. Because most people feel. And then my second piece of evidence, my elaboration led into my next piece of evidence. And again, I'm just incorporating it as part of my idea, part of my thoughts. Pennies aren't worth the trouble of carrying them around, end quote. And this one came from source 2. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and go into a wrap up here, because I did some elaboration before, did another elaboration, another elaboration. So I feel like I've given quite a bit of my own original thought to this already. So I think that that's okay. So I'm going to wrap up by saying, if this is the case, we should free America and ourselves from this costly burden. Okay, so that would be the final body paragraph of the essay, and the only thing I would have left to do is complete the conclusion, which we'll do next week. And remember, the conclusion is just a tying up of ideas. It is a restatement of the ideas that you have been trying to convince the reader of up to that point. So we'll work on that next week. And I hope you guys are all doing well. And I will be available if you have any questions. Let me know.